The box was breathing. Not literally, no, but in the silence of the room, as the afternoon sun poured through the broken window slats of their mud-walled house, it felt like it. The old cardboard box in the corner, covered with a tattered cloth and layers of time, seemed to exhale secrets. Secrets that had been sealed for years inside the one place 17-year-old Mbila had always been told not to touch. Her mother had died 3 weeks ago. A stroke, the aunties said. Just fell and never got up again. One moment she was sweeping the front steps, and the next, her body lay limp on the cold ground, her lips parted as if caught mid-prayer or mid-regret. Mbila had not cried at the funeral. Not because she was cold, but because the grief hadn't found the right door in her heart yet. Instead, it wandered like a drunk spirit, looking for where to land. But today it found its way to that box. The house was empty. Auntie Chantal had gone to the market to borrow beans. Her younger cousins were at the stream. Mbila was supposed to be fetching firewood, but something about that box called to her like her mother's voice used to in the dark when the nightmares came. Soft, firm, familiar. She knelt before it slowly, her bare knees pressing into the cracked red earth. Her fingers hesitated, and then peeled back the cloth like peeling skin from a wound. The cardboard had rotted in some places. A strong smell rose. Not the smell of rot. The smell of memory. Dry perfume, old leather, and plastic wrappers. She reached inside. First, she found her mother's old yellow scarf, the one she used to wear every Sunday, tied in that perfect cone at the back of her head. The smell of sweat and talcum powder still clung to it. Then, a thick envelope. Inside it, crumpled bills, mostly Congolese francs, some dollars, some euros. The paper was damp in corners, worn. But the amount was shocking. Mbila had never seen that much money in her life. Not even during Christmas when her uncle from Brazzaville came to show off. She looked deeper. Ziploc bag filled with unused condoms. Another envelope. This one with printed slips. Names, dates, amounts. Night service, one read. Short time, 3B, another. Hotel logos stamped in red ink. It wasn't one. It was 20, 40, more. And beneath all that, a photo, her mother younger, thinner, standing in front of a lodge in a tight red dress and cheap heels. Her face was soft, unreadable. But her eyes, those eyes, Mbila had always known, stared into the camera like they'd already seen the end of the story. Mbila dropped everything and stepped back like the box had bitten her. Her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers began to tremble. For a moment, the mud house seemed to spin. The shadows on the walls turned longer. Her mother's quiet voice echoed in her head. You will finish school, Mbila. I don't care how. You will not end like me. For years, she had believed her mother sold fruit by the bus station, small trays. Petty profit. She thought the hunger, the ragged clothes, and the constant borrowing from neighbors were just part of the hardship. Nothing more. But this was not just hardship. This was a secret life. A hidden war her mother fought behind locked doors and motel curtains. And no one told her. Not Auntie Chantal. Not Uncle Kasongo. Not the neighbors who came to mourn but kept whispering when they thought she couldn't. Here. She gathered everything and put it back, except the photo. She folded it and tucked it into her bra. The box no longer looked like it was breathing. It looked like it had finally died, released from the burden of holding in too much truth. That evening, when the lanterns flickered and the crickets hummed outside, Mbila sat beside her aunt near the fire. They were roasting cassava. The silence between them had grown familiar since the funeral, like an old wound no one wanted to press. Mbila broke it. Maman. What was she really doing when she said she sold fruit? Auntie Chantal didn't answer. She didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared into the fire like it held her own secrets. I saw the receipts, Mbila added. The condoms. The money. This time the silence was thick. Then a long breath. Sharp, almost like pain. Auntie Chantal wiped her palms on her wrapper, turned to her slowly. Your mother was not a fruit seller, that was all she said. And then she stood, went inside, and closed the door behind her. The next day, a neighbor died, Mama Fatou, the local matron. The village prepared for the funeral. Mbila followed, numb and distant, as people gathered, wailed, and prayed. But her mind was spinning. She kept hearing phrases from the past in her mother's voice, phrases that now took on new meaning. Some women work by day. Some work by night. But we all work to live. If people spit at you, wipe it off and keep walking. Dignity is not always visible, my daughter. Sometimes it wears dirty shoes and doesn't look you in the eye. She had never understood, until now. As the funeral prayers began, Mbila sat under the mango tree, watching the women in faded dresses sway and sing. Then, an elder woman, toothless, blind in one eye, came and sat beside her. Her voice was rough. Your mother was a soldier, child. Not all soldiers carry guns. Mbila looked at her, stunned. She saved you with her own body, the old woman continued, while we judged her, while we called her names behind her back. She didn't care. You were her reason. Her fight, Mbila wanted to cry, but no tears came. Only heat behind her eyes. Only a silence that throbbed louder than screams. The whispers began after the funeral. They floated through the village like dry leaves on a dusty road, soft, sharp, and everywhere. They didn't say her mother's name directly, but Mbila knew. She saw the way mouths paused when she walked by. She saw how the women stopped laughing the moment her footsteps reached the edge of their doorways. She saw how the men looked, not cruel but strange. Like they remembered her mother's body, not her soul. That week, Mbila started walking differently. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt watched. Even the trees seemed to stare. And deep inside her, shame and anger were fighting like wild dogs. It was Wednesday when she went back to school. Her mother had always said, "Education is the only gift I can give you." So, Mbila forced herself into her ironed uniform, tied her hair, and left the house. The sun was hot. The road was dry and cracked like old skin. As she walked past the narrow dirt paths, boys whispered and giggled behind her. She heard one say, "That's the daughter of the night woman." Her spine froze. She turned, stared. They looked down. At school, her friends acted like she had become invisible. Mbila used to sit with 3 girls during lunch, Bintu, Aisha, and Noma. But that day they moved to another bench. They didn't laugh with her, didn't greet her. Even the teachers avoided her eyes. She sat alone under the jacaranda tree, watching purple flowers fall like quiet tears around her. She wanted to stand up and scream, to shout, "My mother sold her body to send me here. You all wear shoes because someone sold mangoes. I wear this uniform because my mother sold herself." But she stayed silent, because she knew, in this world, some truths were too heavy to carry in public. That night, she asked Auntie Chantal a question that had been burning her from the inside out. They were shelling groundnuts in the kitchen. The oil lamp was low. The shadows on the wall danced like ghosts. Did everyone know what Mama did? Chantal stopped shelling. She didn't look up. They knew, she said finally. They all knew, but no one ever helped her? Why? Mbila asked. Because shame is heavier than poverty in this village, Chantal said. People would rather starve than be seen doing what your mother did. But your mother, she was different. She didn't care about pride, only about you. Mbila lowered her head. Her hands were shaking. Did you judge her too? She whispered. Chantal sighed. Her eyes filled with something heavy. Not quite tears, not quite guilt. I used to, she said. Until the day I saw her come home with blood on her legs. She had been beaten by a client who refused to pay. But she still came in, cooked you porridge, and washed your uniform with trembling hands. The room went silent. Even the rats in the ceiling stopped scratching. The next day, Mbila did something wild. She went to the lodge, not to sell her body, but to see, to understand. The building was still there. Rose Garden Inn was written in faded paint. The pink walls were cracked. The air smelled of sweat, smoke, and sad music. A few men loitered outside. A woman with red lipstick and tired eyes leaned against the wall, chewing gum. Mbila walked up to her. "Do you know a woman named Mama Rose?" The woman squinted, then nodded slowly. "Yes, she worked here for a long time." "Quiet woman. Never caused trouble?" "She was my mother." The woman stared, then stepped closer. "Your mother used to sit right there," she said, pointing to a plastic chair in the corner. "She never drank. Never smoked. Just came, did her work, and left. Always carried a little book with her, where she wrote how much she earned. Said she was saving for your school fees." Mbila felt something crack open inside her. She sat on the chair, touched its edges, tried to feel the heat her mother left behind. Years of silence, survival, and sacrifice. Later that week, the village priest came to visit. He brought food. Rice, beans, a small packet of soap. "Your mother used to tithe every Sunday," he said, looking at Mbila. "Even when she had nothing left." Mbila blinked. "She told me once," the priest continued, "that she didn't think she'd go to heaven, but she wanted to make sure you got there." Mbila couldn't hold it anymore. She cried, deep, heaving sobs that shook her ribs and burned her throat. The priest didn't stop her. He just sat there watching the fire, letting the truth burn away years of shame. One morning, while cleaning the room, Mbila found her mother's small blue diary hidden behind a crack in the wall. It was thin, only a few pages, but it was full of entries. "Got 12,000 francs today. Bought Mbila's exercise books. The man from room 6 hit me, but I kept the money. I will not stop. My body is tired. My soul is tired. But when I see my daughter smile, I breathe again. I know she will hate me one day, but I hope she will understand." By the time Mbila finished reading, her hands were soaked in tears. She kissed the last page, held it to her chest. "I understand now, Mama," she whispered, "and I'm proud." That weekend, the church held a memorial for her mother. It was small, simple. A few neighbors came. Some still whispered, but Mbila stood in front of them. Wearing her school uniform, she didn't tremble. She didn't cry. She held the blue diary in her hands and read her mother's words out loud, each line like a drumbeat of truth. Then she said, "My mother was not a sinner. She was a soldier. She gave her body to protect my future. You may judge her, but I honor her, and I will never be ashamed." Some gasped, some looked down, some wept. But no one spoke. And for the first time, the silence did not feel like shame. It felt like respect. The letter was wrapped in plastic and hidden under a loose floor tile. Mbila found it one evening after a heavy storm, when she noticed the tile near her mother's bed had shifted. At first, she thought it was just water damage. But when she pulled it up, she found a small folded plastic bag. Inside, there was a red ribbon and a neatly folded paper. Old, yellowed, still dry, like it had been waiting to be read for years. Her mother's handwriting covered the page, strong and curved, just like how she used to write Mbila's name on her school books. At the top, it said, "To my daughter, the day I cannot face her." Mbila froze. The wind outside whispered against the walls like it knew something. She sat on the floor and opened the letter with trembling hands. "My sweet Mbila, if you are reading this, I am gone. And maybe by now you have found out the truth about what I did, about how I earned money. I am sorry I could never tell you myself. I wanted to, so many times, but every time I looked into your eyes, I saw something I didn't want to destroy. Your pride in me." Mbila's heart twisted. "I know people will talk. They always do. But please listen to me. I did not sell my body because I wanted to. I did it because no one would hire me. Because after your father died, the world closed its doors. I knocked and begged. I cleaned houses. I washed clothes. But it was never enough. You were too smart, too hungry to learn. I had to choose shame or your future. I chose shame." Tears rolled down Mbila's cheeks. The words cut deep, but they also healed something inside her. Something she didn't even know was broken. There were nights I cried while washing blood off my thighs. Days I went without eating so you could have books. I lied to you, yes, but every lie was love in disguise. I just didn't want you to grow up carrying my scars. The letter was shaking in her hands now. If the world turns its back on you because of me, don't bow your head. Lift it higher. Let them see the face of a daughter raised by fire and courage. Let them see that the seed I planted did not grow in shame. It grew in sacrifice. I love you, always. And I'm proud of the woman you are becoming. Mama Rose Mbila sat in silence for a long time. The floor was cold beneath her, but she didn't feel it. Her tears had stopped, but her breath was heavy, like her mother's spirit was sitting beside her, breathing with her, telling her, "It's okay now. You know the truth." But the truth didn't just come with peace, it came with fire. Because now she knew there was more to her mother's life, more than receipts, condoms, and tired nights. There was abuse. There were men who took without asking. There were people who could have helped, but didn't. And now Mbila needed answers. The next morning, she walked to the big yellow house at the top of the hill, Uncle Kasongo's house. He was her mother's older brother. A proud man, always in clean clothes, always sitting on his porch, barking orders and pretending to care. He had been absent when her mother struggled. Absent when she died. But he came to the funeral in a shiny shirt and dark sunglasses, pretending to cry. Mbila knocked on his gate. The houseboy opened. "Tell him I'm here." His niece, Mbila. A few minutes later, Uncle Kasongo came out, frowning. "What do you want, girl?" Mbila held up the letter. "Did you know?" "Know what?" "About Mama. What she was doing to keep me in school. To keep me alive." He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the paper in her hand, then away. We all knew. "It wasn't our place." Mbila's voice rose. "Your place. She was your sister." Kasongo stepped closer, his voice low. "Don't raise your voice. What your mother did, she did by choice. She didn't ask us for help, because she knew you would say no," Mbila snapped. "You had money. You just didn't care." His eyes hardened. "Watch your tongue." But Mbila didn't care anymore. She looked him in the eye, fire in her bones. "You let her suffer, but she still gave me everything. So don't act like a man of honor. You're not even half of what she was." And with that, she turned and walked away. Her heart was pounding. Her eyes were hot. But inside her, something had shifted. A new strength. The kind only truth can give. Later that day, she went to the market. She found the old woman with the red scarf, the one who used to share roasted peanuts with her mother. "Mama Kemi," she said, "did you ever help my mother?" The woman looked away. I gave her food sometimes. But I was afraid. Afraid if I helped her too much, people would think I was like her. Mbila nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty." Then she said, "I'm going to tell her story. All of it, even the ugly parts, because she mattered." That night, under the light of one flickering candle, Mbila began to write, not for school, not for a grade, but for the world. She wrote her mother's name at the top, Rose, a woman who loved in secret, and she told the story the village never wanted to hear. She wrote about a woman who sold her body to buy exercise. Books? A woman who wore shame like armor and still smiled at her child. A woman who was judged, used, ignored, but never broke. And when she finished the last line, she whispered, "Now they will know who you really were." A week later, her story was printed in a local youth magazine. A teacher had helped her submit it. It was titled, "The Soldier Who Wore Heels." People read it. They cried. Some called her brave. Others stayed silent, but no one could pretend anymore, because the truth was now public, and truth once spoken does not go back to sleep. The grave was still unmarked. 2 months had passed since Mama Rose was buried under the old mango tree behind the village chapel. No headstone, no name. Just a small mound of dry earth, pressed down by time and silence. Even in death, the world had chosen to erase her. Mbila sat in front of it with a small wooden board in her hands. She had carved it herself with a knife borrowed from the school workshop. She wasn't very good at it. The letters were crooked, the edges rough, but it was hers. Real. Honest. She pressed the board into the soil. It read, Rose, Mother, Fighter, Silent Hero, and beneath that, in smaller writing, my future was bought with her suffering. I will not forget, the wind blew gently. The mango leaves whispered above her. Somewhere far a rooster crowed. And inside her chest, the grief she had carried like a stone began to soften, not disappear, but reshape itself into something she could live with. The village didn't say much after the article came out. Some nodded in passing. A few mothers hugged her and said she was brave, but most people kept their distance, as if they didn't know how to face a girl who now carried the full story of her mother's life. Even her school changed, not officially, but she saw it. The principal greeted her now, the same one who once threatened to expel her for unpaid fees. A few teachers gave her longer looks, sad eyes full of things they never said, and her classmates, especially the girls, started to sit with her again. Slowly, as if guilt walked beside them, Bintu, who once moved away from her bench, came back one afternoon and said, I'm sorry. Just that. No excuses. No pretending. And it was enough, because Mbila had learned something powerful. The truth does not need everyone's approval. It only needs your courage to carry it. But there was one thing still left to do, one promise she had to keep. Her mother's dream had never been just for survival. It was for education. For a future beyond the walls of the mud house, beyond the sweat and secrets. So Mbila studied harder than ever. Every night, she read by candlelight. Every morning, she woke before sunrise to revise. She refused to let her mother's pain be wasted, and when the national exam results came out, her name was printed first on the school board, top of the district, scholarship confirmed, university in Kinshasa. Fully paid, Auntie Chantal cried when she heard the news. Real tears. The kind that come from both pride and guilt. She hugged Mbila tight and whispered, Your mother would be dancing today. The night before she left for university, Mbila sat alone outside the house. The stars above Kinshasa blinked like old eyes watching over her. The city lights in the far distance glowed like promises waiting to be kept. She took out the photo, the one of her mother in the red dress, standing outside the lodge. She looked at it for a long time. Her mother was not smiling in the picture. Her shoulders were tense. Her eyes, those deep, strong eyes, stared directly at the camera, unafraid. For years, Mbila thought it was a look of shame. Now she knew. It was a look of defiance. She turned the photo over and wrote on the back, You carried the weight of my future on your body. I will carry your name in every room I enter. Then she slipped it into her journal and closed it. The next morning, the village gathered at the bus station to see her off. Some came out of respect, others out of curiosity. But no one whispered anymore, because Mbila had done what very few dared to do. She spoke the truth with her chest held high, and in doing so, she gave every silent woman in the village a small piece of freedom. As the bus pulled away, she looked out the window one last time. The mud houses, the narrow paths, the old mango tree where her mother lay, and she whispered, barely audible, You did not die in shame, Mama. You died a warrior. And I will make the world remember your name. Epilogue years later, at a women's conference in Kinshasa, a young woman took the stage. She wore a yellow scarf, the same one her mother used to wear. She introduced herself as Mbila Rose Mukendi, writer, human rights advocate, and founder of Silent Mothers Foundation, an organization that helps women who trade their bodies to survive. She told her story, not with tears, but with power. She spoke of survival, of shame that turns into strength, of love that wears a hidden face. And when she finished, the entire room stood in silence. Not applause, not noise, just silence. Because sometimes, silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is respect.